Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind. My guest today is Douglas Mulhall, and he's been my guest before. He's going to talk to us about elastin, which he talked to us about last time. And today he's going to give us some things that we can do to help elastin help our body stay healthy and flexible and all those things that are not always in the same shape they were when we were 20 or 30 or 40. So, Douglas, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Looking forward to this one. I think there's a lot of new stuff to talk about. And one thing I just want to emphasize is, people aren't going to hear the regular eat well and get exercise. That's a key part of it. But there's a lot of extra stuff going on there in how you eat well, what type of exercise you do, but not just that, a lot of other things, but we'll get into it.
Okay, so in a way, folks, we're going to nag you like everybody else does. We're going to say eat correctly, take care of your body, exercise, all those things that you get told to do all the time. And before we get into it anymore, I just want to say that it's really important to find things you like so that you can pursue those practices that are so good for you. If you're doing an exercise that you don't like, not only are you hating it, but it's actually not good for your body. When we're doing something that we don't enjoy, it's aversive, and the effect on the body isn't really great at all. So find the things you choose, the healthful foods that you love, the healthful exercise that you love doing, do those things. Okay.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking about some surprises too, just in case some people go, oh, exercise and nutrition. I've heard that before. Click. No, don't click. Because we're going to be talking about a lot more than that.
Okay. All right. So, Douglas, I just invite you to get right into it. Tell us again a little overview about why elastin is so important to us as we age.
Well, just a quick little thing. Everyone can do it. It's called the pinch test, and we've done it before. But here you go. So you just take the skin on the back of your hand between your thumb and your forefinger. You hold it up for about 3 seconds, and then you let it go. And in most of us our age, you'll see how slowly it goes down. In people that are much older than us, it just sticks up there. And in younger people, in your kids and your grandkids, in your kids, you'll see it go down really fast. And in the grandkids, it'll snap back. So that is, in general, not so much the collagen in your skin, but it is the elastic fiber in your skin that is woven in between the collagen. So together, collagen, elastin, collagen gives your skin strength and firmness, but elastin is what gives it that spring and that flexibility. And so it's actually the elastin that degrades when you start to wrinkle. And most importantly, it is not just in your skin, by no means. It's in 30 of your organs. It's what makes them flexible and allows them to expand and contract. That's why, a lot of us, we have to pee more often when we get older because the elastin, the elasticity in the bladder is kind of degrading. But it's in your heart, it's in your arteries, and imagine. So your arteries depend, your body depends on your arteries to get those nutrients and oxygen to the rest of you. And they need to be flexible to do that to help the blood, the heart, move blood around and oxygen around. And so that elastin is critical to all of those functions and many more. So here's the problem. Our bodies are underdeveloped, our immune systems are underdeveloped in two crucial ways. The first one is that for reasons that even the world's top experts haven't been able to explain yet, your body stops assembling the elastic fiber in your body when you're 30. Now, it's not that bad because elastic fiber is designed to last a lifetime. It's got a half-life of 70 years. So it's the longest lasting protein in the body. But when it's not being replaced, when it's not being repaired, after the age of 30, guess what? That's when you start to age. And a lot of that is due to the beginning of the degradation of the elastin and nothing replacing it. So that's the first crucial underdeveloped aspect of our bodies that just human beings, that's the way they're built. The second one is called calcification. A lot of people hear about it as hardening of the arteries, but it is also a mistake that your immune system makes. So the immune system is underdeveloped in this area. So everybody knows about inflammation, but the problem is that inflammation is fine for getting us out of trouble in the short run. And that's mostly, a lot of what it's designed for. It's designed to combat, infections. And if you get a wound, the inflammation comes along so that it cleans it up, and then, your body starts to fix it. But the problem is that as you get this chronic degradation of the elastic fiber in your body, it provokes a chronic immune response, which is inflammation. That inflammation, as we know, when it's chronic, is definitely not good for you. But there's a second problem, and that is that when plan A, inflammation, doesn't work, the body very quickly resorts to plan B, and that is to wall off the damage, which is really good, like for things like, specifically located wounds in the body. Like, for example, I froze my ear once when I was skiing, and the body kind of surrounded it with a cyst that was calcified, and about a year and a half later, it just popped out of my ear. And a lot of people get these cysts that come out. Well, that's the body sort of surrounding, hardening these things to wall them off from the rest of the body. That doesn't work so well when it tries to wall off your arteries. And that's what's happening. What's happening is that you're getting this chronic immune response in the arteries because of the damage to the elastic fiber that's in the wall of the artery. And that's where this calcification starts, which is as hard as rock. I was just talking to someone we're working with the other day, a surgeon, and he was saying that a lot of the time when they try and insert stents or needles into the artery, they can't get them in. And some of them even break because this stuff is so hard. So ultimately what's happening is we're all turning to stone. So these two things are bodily problems that our immune system just hasn't figured out yet. We're a very young species. We're only a couple 100,000 years old, whereas whales and sharks, they've been around for tens of millions of years. And to a large extent, their immune systems have figured it out, which is why a lot of them live much longer than people do. So there are mammals and fish that live a whole lot longer, and they're on the upper end of the chain in terms of intelligence. So it's not due to a lack of, they're stupid so they can live longer. No, they have a very high level of intelligence and they live a lot longer.
I feel like I can hear people who are listening to you, Douglas, saying, oh my gosh, that's what's been happening to me.
Because most people have never heard of it.
Right. It isn't totally a failure on our part to take good care of ourselves and so on. It's a natural process, an unnatural, natural process that we're sort of doomed to struggle with because we're human. We come in this package. So we can get rid of the guilt and go to coping with it. Yes.
There's all kinds of bad stuff that we do to ourselves all the time that isn't great, but we have to face up to this reality. And that's what I've been working on for the past 20 years. And that's why I wrote the book, is because we have to face up to this reality of these two problems with the immune system. And the good news is there's a lot that's being done about it in the R&D development, also in therapies, but also there are things that everybody can do to slow down that process. Even when you're our age, there are things that you can do. A lot of people think, when they're in their 60s and 70s and 80s, like a lot of this stuff isn't going to work for me, or it's going to take too long. No, that's not the case at all. And, we'll get into that in a moment. So that's the nature of the beast, so to speak, that we are addressing. And one of the things that's provoked by it, and when I say one, a whole bunch of things put together, is something called total stress load. Now, total stress load is the sum total of all the different types of stress that occur on your body and that build up over time. So that's emotional stress, repetitive physical stress, like, running too long and getting repetitive stress injuries, things like that. Wounds, over time, you've got an old injury that, isn't healing. And so, and poor nutrition, toxins that end up in your body. So all of these nutritionists will tell you, and holistic doctors will tell you that this all adds up. And a lot of holistic physicians have now actually developed something called a total stress load score. And a lot of artificial intelligence is actually being used to augment this now so that they can, get it more accurate. But until now, there hasn't been, there's no national standard for total stress load. And that's one thing that really needs to be done. But we are getting closer to it as more and more clinics and physicians and the whole wellness thing starts to accelerate. So we are getting there. But total stress load is one thing I talk a lot about in the book, because again, it's something that most people haven't heard of. And today, I just want to give you an example. I know that this is going to air not today, but a little later, but this is still going to be relevant when the show airs. And that is that in the Journal of the American Medical Association, a study was published today showing that the risk of death of kids in America is 1.8 times higher than most other high-income countries in the world. And the chief author of that study, gave an example that in his practice, he's a physician. In his practice, when he started in the 1990s, he almost never saw chronic conditions among children. Now, 50% of the kids that he sees have chronic conditions. Okay. Now that might not be relevant for us, but it is, because if you've got kids or grandkids, it's going to be highly relevant for you to see them being chronically ill all the time. And what's really interesting is that he exactly gave this example of all of the different stresses on our bodies that are leading to this. He didn't use the word total stress load, but that's exactly what he was talking about. So that's a good example of how contemporary studies are really beginning to show that there's a massive impact on human health of total stress load. And a lot of those stresses, oddly enough, even though standards of living, are much better than they used to be, are actually getting us in worse health than we were, 20 or 30 years ago. So
what's stressing us, whether we're 6 years old or 60, that total is going up even as we speak. Toxins are increasing in our environment. We know that. There are a lot of things that we have no power over that are stressors, but that are going up, up, up. So it's, in a way, we're becoming more fragile, aren't we? Even though so many things are easier for human beings today.
Well, we are, but on the other hand, I don't want to leave people with the impression, because again, they're going to go click as soon as they hear there's nothing we can do, but there's a whole lot you can do about it. Even though you can't control that huge environment that's out there, your own micro environment is actually something that you do have a lot of control over. And some of it is quite surprising. And I think, this is the time for us to get into that, because I know you asked me before the show, let's focus on what people can do about it. So one of the first things, and a lot of people our age tend to spend, especially in the southern climates when it's getting hotter and hotter, they spend a lot of times indoors. And in general, the studies show that people in general spend up to 85% of their lives indoors. So where are you going to focus on your environment? Well, you're going to focus on your indoor environment, but most people aren't fully aware of how important that indoor environment is to their health. And in particular, there's one area, and that is indoor air quality. And so that indoor air quality is so important because what happens in well-insulated houses and that have, air conditioning, that you don't exchange air with the outside, or they have poor filtration or whatever, is that these microparticles and nanoparticles build up in the air, and you end up breathing them in. So these things contain all kinds of nasties, toxic chemicals, but in particular, they contain heavy metals from all of the air pollutants that are generated from everything from, car tires that I'll talk about in a moment, to wildfire smoke, to just general air pollution. So the first thing that you can do is make sure that you've got really good filtration in your air handling unit that exchanges air with the outside, your air conditioning unit and your heat pumps that just might exchange air with the inside, and your heating systems. So those systems don't come with the best filters. But if you go over to Home Depot, for example, you can get something called a HEPA filter, which is a superfine filter. And you can also check with the company that provides you with the air handling equipment and ask them, what's the best filter that I can get? Because most filters are designed to protect the machinery and not your lungs. And so that's a very simple thing that you can do, is upgrade those filters and improve the quality of your indoor air. And that's really, really important. You can do the same with the water you drink, because a lot of these heavy metals, for example, and toxins are found in tap water. And so you can install, and you have to be really careful about how when you look at what they take out, you've got to be very careful. But either under the sink, drinking water filters, or home filters. We have a home-wide filter in our system, are really important for taking those things out. And, you can have your water tested very easily in a lot of parts of the country. And, that's something you should do. So
let me ask you, Douglas,
yep.
How important is it that you make sure that your water is as pure as possible, not just for drinking, but for whatever your body is exposed to, showers, bathing, whatever? Is that all important, or is it more just what you ingest?
No, because I have a real problem with chlorinated water. Our water here is not chlorinated. We're on a well. Many people in America are on wells, and a lot of people just throw chlorine into their well. Well, okay, fine. That's really, unless it's absolutely necessary to kill some really awful, nasty pathogens. But pathogens are starting to eat chlorine for food because they're becoming immune to them. So you're better off installing an ozonated, microfilter system, or ozonation system, that has different types of filtration and water purification. And back to your question, like, chlorine drives my skin crazy. Well, that's not really great. And also, it interacts with a lot of the metals and toxins that are, end up on your skin when you're washing. And one of the worst things that people do to themselves is the soaps that they're using, and the detergents and the shampoos, because they can be pretty aggressive on your skin when you're using them day after day after day, which people often tend to do. So it's not just what's in the water, but what you're putting in the water and on your body when you're having a bath or a shower. So a lot of the products that are out there are very specific about this in terms of their impact on the skin. But don't try and be an expert on it. You should really ask your doctor or your dermatologist or a nutritionist, what is the optimal product. There's so many skin products out there. Well, I'm going to start with one when we get into the elastin repair, but I'm not going to get into the shampoos and everything, because it's pretty broad. Just to say, you need to pay attention to those. And the answer to your question is yes, it's very important.
All right. Beware.
And do something.
Yeah. Okay.
Act.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
So we've done air quality and water quality, which I can't overemphasize enough. Then we want to talk about nutrition, for a second. So, first of all, yes, plant-based diet is definitely good for you. I've been plant-based for 8 years now. I'm not religious about it. I eat a little fish. If I go out, and there's not a vegan dish available, I don't sweat it. But in general, a primarily plant-based diet is good. Why is that? Well, first of all, red meat is pro-inflammatory, period. So it's going to generate chronic inflammation, especially when you're older and it's reacting with other stuff in your body. This is especially true for highly prepared foods. And I just want to emphasize this because it's a big deal right now with the federal government and the FDA. As you know, Kennedy is really focusing on these highly processed foods for the first time. The FDA is really focusing on these, and he's read the Riot Act to some of the food companies on it. So this is a very topical matter. Why is that? Because highly processed foods have a lot of contaminants in them. When I mean contaminants, I don't mean poisons, but things that are really not great for you and that your body reacts to badly. So the more processed your food is, the less nutrition you're getting, the more inflammatory your response is going to be. So regardless of whether you're on a plant-based diet or any other type of diet, you want to go for what they call whole foods. And a lot of people say, oh God, I'm, later in life, I'm living alone. It's so much trouble to prepare this stuff. No, you can actually start to order meals now that are, made from scratch. They're made from whole foods. You can go into your local supermarket, and a lot of them have now these individual servings that are pretty well, prepared the same day or previously, don't have a lot of highly processed food. So, those are available. You just have to look for them. And I just want to emphasize that a lot, because older people, especially if people are living on their own, the first thing that goes out the window is your nutrition. And that is disaster. So, and also associated with that is you want to start thinking about doing things like cooking together with your friends and just the whole social thing that's going on. So all of that will help with this nutritional approach. But above all, stay away from these highly processed foods. And by the way, that's not me just saying that anymore. It's the Department of Health. So this is good news that they're focusing on that type of thing. So that's the real focus, is whole foods for nutrition.
All right. And we recently did a podcast that anybody can listen to or watch with Julia Loggins, and she talked about exactly the same thing. And it was very much oriented toward older people, how to prepare very simple, very easy meals that are going to be really good for you and only take 7 minutes. What's better than that if you hate to cook like I do? Or even if you like to cook, but you're the only one who's going to eat it, and why bother and all that. And exactly what you're saying, Douglas, that nutrition, it's so easy to let go of it and say, I'm just going to have cereal, whatever, and not keep in mind that our body needs more desperately than ever to be taken care of just impeccably. So, okay, on to the next. What else do we need to pay attention to?
Well, honestly, I would say read the book, Discovering the Nature of Longevity. Now, why do I say that? Because what we're about to talk about right now is what the book is very much about. Although it starts by talking about total stress load, why these things are happening. It describes what elastin is, what's happening to it. But then, remember earlier we said this is what is happening to your body, and it's part of your immune system, and so you can't just do the normal things. You've also got to start looking at therapies. And that is what I have spent, the last 20 years working on developing, is these therapies that help us reverse the damage from this total stress load. And what we're working on, and I just want to give an example, is actually restoring elastin in the arteries. And we're not the only ones that are working on this, by the way. So it's not just someone sitting here claiming they have a magic bullet cure and they're the only ones, with a therapy that works. No, that's not the situation at all. Around the world, there are at least 5 companies and many, many universities that are working on therapies for restoring elastin fiber. And as a result of that, a number of them are in clinical trial right now. And this is important. So I just want to give one example. You've heard of aneurysms, and a lot of people our age have heard of aneurysms. They affect, 10 million Americans. And that is when you get a bulge in the artery, and when it gets to 5 millimeters, you have to have an operation, and the operations are quite risky. They're getting better, but you still have to have, fairly invasive surgery to get this fixed. If you don't, they burst, and sometimes they will burst before that, and quite often they kill people, or they will disable them for life. So aneurysms have been a severe unmet need for people across the United States and globally. Now, aneurysms are caused by the weakening of the elastic fiber in the artery. And when that happens, then you start to get this bulging out of the artery. There is a scientific group at Clemson University in South Carolina that has pioneered a therapy that's then been spun out to a number of biotech companies. And one of those is a company called Nectaro Medical. And they have used a device to deliver a substance that actually restores elastin fiber. It's called pentagalloyl glucose. No one has to remember the name. It's PGG for short. I describe it in the book. And the important thing about it is it protects elastin fiber from this degradation by all these inflammatories. And the result of that is that when it's protected, it can actually start to regenerate. And why is that? Because actually your body doesn't stop producing the building blocks for elastin. They're still being produced. But a lot of things going on in your body as you age prevent those building blocks from coalescing, from combining into the fiber, because the fiber is so complex. And this helps the body to restart that assembly process. So basically, you got an assembly line that's been stalled, and that's even worse because all the components are running around causing even more trouble because they're not forming the way that they should into the finished product. This helps them form into the finished product. The result of that in a phase 3 clinical trial has been that aneurysms have been prevented from bursting, and they've basically been arrested. So this is a huge advance. And this clinical trial is still going on, and they're still recruiting people. So if you know anyone who has an aneurysm, they should go to my website, which is www.calcify.com. That's CALCIFY, calcify.com, after calcification. And they can see there's a section on elastin, and there you can go down and you can find the link to the clinical trial. It's actually also at the top of the page. So there's a concrete example of something that has been worked on for 25 years. Finally, it's into clinical trial, and people are being protected. So it's really remarkable. And that's just one of about 5 different therapies, as I mentioned. The next one I want to talk about is the same substance, but it's being used on skin, and it's on the market today. Full disclosure, I'm working with the scientists who developed it, but I have no commercial interest in the product whatsoever. The product is called Neolastin, 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 and it's available by mail order, and it contains this product called PGG that helps to restore. Just want to emphasize one thing. This is not medical advice. None of what I'm talking about today is medical advice. It's just to inform people about what is out there. So Neolastin is this cream, and it's sort of a series of products that now have come available. And as far as I know, I think it's the only product on the market still that contains pentagalloyl-glucose. So that's what makes it so interesting. So it's used for wrinkles. It's used for skin that is chafing, is degrading, and it's out there today. It's available on the market. Now, so we've talked about clinical trials. We've talked about things that are out on the market. Now we talk about your arteries. Now, this is what I call the big kahuna and what we've been working on for decades. And it's difficult because, it's inside you. You don't rub it on your skin. And unlike aneurysms, it's all over your body. So it's, throughout your whole system. Your arterial system degrades, as we talked about before. So I'm working with this group of scientists at Clemson University, headed up by Professor Naren Vivahari, who is the one who discovered that pentagalloyl-glucose, which, by the way, is a naturally derived product. It comes from a lot of things, tree bark, different types of vegetables and grapes, but also it comes from the rind of the pomegranate fruit, stuff that you normally throw out. Don't throw it out anymore. It's full of PGG. But anyways, the problem with PGG, like when you eat it, it's in a lot of your foods, but there's not enough in there to fully restore this assembly process. It's still good for your elastin, but as you age, it just can't counteract the body's immune response that is causing all of this trouble and switching off the elastin production. So we are focusing on something called peripheral artery disease. The name of our company is Elastin Therapeutics. We have developed a very sophisticated therapy that combines an antibody that latches onto the elastic fiber with several different chemicals, naturally derived chemicals, and other drugs that actually address this calcification of the elastic and kickstart the elastin regeneration process itself. And all of that is put together in a nano-sized liposome, and it's attached to this antibody that goes straight to the damaged elastin. And this is in preclinical right now, but we have very convincing proof in lab animals that this stuff can reverse calcification in heart diseases like peripheral artery disease. And we're in the process of developing that, and we expect to be in first clinical trial in the next 2 years. So there you have, in summary, we've talked about air quality, we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about exercise, we've talked about the therapies, what's in clinical trial, what's on the market, and what's coming down the pipe. All of that is covered in Discovering the Nature of Longevity.
So it's all in your book. And
yeah,
probably
I want to emphasize that not as much the nutrition and exercise, because so many other books cover it. So we're really focusing on how to reverse the damage from this. That's what the book is about.
The thing that occurs to me, Douglas, as we close today is we are hearing a lot, and people are certainly experiencing this, that our lives are going on longer, much longer than they used to. Life expectancy is much greater. That isn't necessarily something to get excited about unless you feel good. And you're talking about having that flexibility physically, having the body working for us instead of so much against us, as it often does as we age, so that as we age, it can feel good. Life can be good. That's really important. So, Douglas, I can't thank you enough. I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this and watching this is grateful. I certainly am. Thank you so very much for being my guest today.
Yeah, and thanks for having me again. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, lots of wonderful information. And thank you to all of you who have been with us. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time. Bye. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver, because you are.